I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday. We are in the first official week, full week of preseason. Hard Knocks with the Chicago Bears starts tonight. And, of course, we know it's training camp season because we're getting a sad litany of players who won't play and players who can't play because they are injured. Dennis, the season is upon us. How are you feeling as we kick off the month of August?
Man, the season is upon us. I'm fantastic. It is outstanding. I will be honest. I did not watch a single bit of last week's game because I was doing something. I forget. I think I might have. No, it wasn't a Caleb's. I don't know. I had something going. Oh, my mom's health issue popped up, but we we're rolling in. I've got underdog drafts going on. I still have at least 2 rookie drafts to complete that haven't started. So
I know I have one dynasty rookie draft. They don't want to do it till like September 1st. I don't understand, but
well, we had one league where I've been in it several years. It's the DGAF league. And you don't get any flexes. You clean your mind, you people. Clean your mind. And it's. I like the league. I like the scoring. I like the guys we're in. But we lost several managers this year. And the commissioner was busy and whatnot. And so we just replaced. We've got people doing a dispersal draft. They're a half to maybe pushing 2/3 done with the dispersal. Once they finish the dispersal, we'll do the rookie draft. And then I have my only Devi league that I'm in that I got shafted last year from going back-to-back championships. That we're getting ready to do restricted free agency where I'm going to let Patrick Mahomes walk. We can't justify paying $32 million for him with the salary cap that we have. But I drafted C.J. Stroud his senior year of college. So, and I got Marvin Harrison this year. I'm all excited about that. Bijan Robinson was on the team. It's a good team. I fully expect to be one of the favorites again this year. So we'll get that wrapped up before the season starts. So I'm ready for football, man.
I've been enjoying the Olympics, but this is a point in time where you start to get a little burned out on Olympics.
Is football in the Olympics?
Yeah, they list it as football, but it's the other kind of football. I am actually reasonably excited about Hard Knocks with the Bears. Kind of curious what we're going to see from Caleb Williams and a lot of the new personalities that they got there. I really enjoyed the off-season version with the Giants that I've been watching that the last few weeks. So excited about that. I just realized Denver doesn't kick off its first preseason game until Sunday morning. It's going to feel like an actual NFL week when I wake up. Until I see Jarrett Stidham roll out there and realize that he's our number one. So that brings us to news. We are going to be talking our top 25 quarterbacks for Re-Draft, but there's plenty of news. And I guess I'll just jump right to it since I spoiled that party. Denver, after spending weeks talking about how great Bo Nix was and throwing out as many verbal bouquets as possible, released his first depth chart, which has, you guessed it, Jarrett Stidham listed as number 1. Guess who's listed as the number 2 quarterback? No, it's not Bo Nix.
Zach
It is
Wilson.
Zach Wilson. And Sean Payton came out and said Jarrett Stidham will work exclusively with the ones in preseason, just like they always imagined it. I can't imagine that Jarrett Stidham is our quarterback for 17 games. Do you think this is a little preseason posturing?
I mean, he's the guy that's been there. He's the most veteran of them, and so he's most familiar with Peyton's offense. So that's a deck that's going to get shuffled week after week after week.
So let's talk injuries a little bit. BJ Ojulari is out for the season for the Dolphins, and also out for your IDP leagues. DeAndre Hopkins won't need surgery, but as I mentioned on Friday, he is out 4 to 6 weeks. We won't see him in the preseason. Could be slowed to start the regular season. CMC is out with a calf injury. They said we won't see him in the preseason. Elijah Mitchell is also injured and banged up. And Jonathan Brooks, still on the PUP list, will not appear in the preseason. So good sign maybe for Chuba Hubbard in Carolina. How are we feeling about some of these other injuries? Personally, I'm not that worried about CMC not playing preseason, given the fact that they give him the ball 900 times. I don't really want him to get preseason carries, but I wish it wasn't because he was injured.
Yeah, I don't think the injury is too severe, and if they probably weren't going to play him to begin with. So now he'll be on the side. He isn't going to – does he really – how many reps does he really need in training camp to be ready? I'm not overly worried. I've got several underdog teams where I had the 101, and while I did kind of play portfolio-wise, so I didn't take CMC every time, but I've got, I think, 3 shares of him at the 101. I like being careful with guys that you know what you're getting. I'm probably more concerned with the Elijah Mitchell injury, to be honest. It seems like a pattern.
Yeah, when I forgot, Dennis Allen made some unflattering comments about Kendry Miller being banged up and hard to show us you deserve to be here unless you're on the field. It is kind of concerning that Mitchell is banged up. For San Francisco, I think it could be an exciting look at Jordan Mason. He seems to be having a really good camp, too. I'm curious to see him operate. For the Panthers, I have thought for a while we were going to see Chuba Hubbard as the lead back at the outset of the season. I think this kind of nails that. It's really hard to imagine that Brooks, coming off that knee injury, already on PUP, missing the entire preseason of his rookie year and most of camp, is going to be trotted out there as your week 1 starter. I do think Brooks will get stronger throughout the season, but I think this locks in a return of Chuba Hubbard time.
Yeah, I think so. Chuba has been a later round, mid, 10, 11th round guy on underdog that's kind of there and easy to grab because it feels like he's going to have at least half of the season, probably a third of the season, he's going to be the guy, and another third of the season where he's going to be getting the bigger share. And we'll see what happens. If they're playing well, they may just roll with it before letting Brooks take over. I do think Brooks is probably the more talented player, but he wouldn't be the first guy coming into the league off an injury. That I think redshirt might be too strong a term for it, but that they ease into it and kind of let him take over year 2.
Yeah, Chuba going current ADP is running back 44. That feels about right to me, based on what I'm suspecting. Couple other guys that are not going to show up in the preseason. Aaron Rodgers returning from injury. They said will not play in the preseason, nor will Deshaun Watson returning from injury or Kyler Murray. How do you feel about these quarterbacks, who probably could use a little bit of work with new pieces and new places, not suiting up for the preseason.
So we need to get used to the new NFL. They're going to go to 18 games. There's going to be virtually no preseason games at all. Your stars and your pretty goods and I'm comfortable with this guy on the team. So many people are going to not play. Why not let these guys that are coming off injuries? They're going to have to shake off the rust. Let them shake it off when it counts, and just move forward from there. Don't risk injuries in meaningless games.
Yeah, you don't want to risk injuries, but at the same time, like if I'm Cleveland, I gave Deshaun Watson a lot of money to get 12 games. I would kind of like to see what he can do, but I guess Jerry Jeudy's out injured anyway. Hey, get used to that, Cleveland fans. Rodgers doesn't surprise me that much. It is interesting to me a little bit with Murray. I guess it doesn't matter that much, but they also have an almost entirely new set of offensive people around him. It might be nice to see a little chemistry, but I'm guessing this probably means we won't really see Marvin Harrison or Trey McBride in the preseason either.
Probably not. And, Desmond Ridder will get the opportunity to play quarterback there, and some other people that I don't know off the top of my head.
They still have Clayton Tune. I think it's Desmond Ridder and Clayton Tune are 2 and 3. I guess my case for both, Cleveland at least was a playoff team last year and figured out how to win regardless of who was there. And Rodgers playing preseason probably doesn't matter that much for the Jets. But Arizona is a team that has not really been that good. I get if you are a good team or if you are a veteran who's had a bunch of great seasons, letting yourself out of the preseason. But if you're a team that was 4-13 and needs some chemistry and hasn't been that impressive, maybe you could use the practice reps. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Last bit of news. We didn't get any movement today, but there's been a lot of rumblings that Brandon Ayuk is actually going to be traded. Adam Schefter reporting today the framework of a trade that satisfies the 49ers is in place with either the Patriots or the Browns, and it's up to Ayuk to see if he can work out a part that he likes. If he goes to the Patriots, I'll feel a hell of a lot better about Drake May. If he goes to the Browns, depends on, a lot. The rumor is that the 49ers want a veteran receiver back, and that from the Patriots, that would be Kendrick Bourne. And I don't know why that would be a sticking point for them. But from the Browns, it would be Amari Cooper. And I sort of understand them wanting Amari Cooper. I think Brandon Ayuk is better than Cooper and would still just be their number one receiver. I think he'd be the number one receiver for either of these teams. Might make me more bullish on the Browns. I don't think he alone is enough to make me feel like the Patriots are a playoff contender.
Yeah, and they're familiar with Kendrick Bourne. That's where he came from. So that I don't know why they would want him back after letting him go and then watching how good he was in New England. But depending on what the contract is and the draft pick compensation, I don't think I would let Amari go. Amari and Ayuk would be great. Hell, give him Judy and Elijah Moore.
Amari's in the last year of his deal, and I gathered from the way the Browns have handled a lot of things that they aren't planning on re-signing him. So maybe they feel like it's just.
Yeah, I could see that too.
They like Judy for some reason, and I don't think the 49ers would take that Judy contract. They just gave Judy that massive new contract. I don't think the 49ers are interested in absorbing that back. Would be a strong suspicion.
Yeah, probably if they don't want to pay Ayuk, who's substantially better than.
Yeah, because let me pull it up real quick. because the Browns, once they signed him to a 3-year, $52.5 million extension with $41 million guaranteed. I'm not sure that that's a contract the 49ers want to take on spec.
That's a get you fired contract, Andrew Berry.
I mean, if the Watson contract didn't get him fired, I don't know what will. Well, let's move on. We're going to talk about quarterbacks. We're going to talk about this is redraft rankings. So these are how we're feeling about them solely on 2024 season. We're going to do our top 25, which is really a quarterback 2+1 because 24 seems weird. So, Dennis, I will let you go first. Give us 25 through 21.
Looking for my mouse. So 25, I got, much to my chagrin, I've got Derek Carr at 25, just squeaking out Daniel Jones, Bryce Young, Russell Wilson. I can see Carr maybe sliding down. It's messy at the 25 point. There's not a lot of hope. But he's got Olave, he's got Shaheed, Alvin Kamara, Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau. He's got some weapons. It's going to come down to can the offensive line keep him upright long enough, because he does have a propensity to throw the ball short and make turnovers occasionally. But got Derek Carr at 25, got Will Levis at 24. This one's a little iffy. I liked it a lot better before DeAndre Hopkins got hurt. I think Calvin Ridley is going to be really good. Pollard is a good receiving back. Chigakonkwo's a good receiving, decent enough depth until, now that if Hopkins misses, 6 or 7 games, I think it could get iffy for Levis. And was it somebody? I think somebody.
Currently, he's only slated to be out 4 to 6 weeks, which I believe projects him to be back week 1 or week 2. I just wonder how slowed up he's going to be.
Yeah, and because he's not fast at this point. The issue, the challenge with Levis is going to be, we know he's got a big arm. Can he make the right decisions? And he's got a little bit of mobility, but, I saw somebody, and I wish I could remember who, 3 or 4 days ago, describe Will Levis. I think it was somebody from Player Profiler. Describe Will Levis as Daniel Jones without the mobility. And so that makes me kind of nervous if I'm looking at it through that lens. But I got Levis at 24, Geno Smith at 23. Guy's got some weapons there, but I think we know who he is. And Dave Canales essentially got a career year out of him. Is who is it now? Ryan Grubbs. Is he going to be able to get another big year out of him? They got rid of Drew Lock because he was making him nervous, and brought in Sam Howell. Geno's banged up a little bit. They have pieces. They've got skill players at running back and wide receiver, and a serviceable tight end in Fant. So could Smith finish his QB 14 or 15? Sure. Could he finish his QB 27 or 28? Yep. I got him at 23. 22, I got Baker Mayfield. I want to believe, but we've seen Dave Canales in Seattle and Dave Canales in Tampa, and now Dave Canales is in Washington. Who did Tampa bring in to run their offense again? Do you remember?
I have to look it up. It was somebody
Liam Cohen from Kentucky, who Baker crossed paths with out in L.A. So there is hope, especially when you got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And Rachaad White, who's a pretty good receiving back. I do think they've got some depth at wide receiver. So Baker could, have one of those better years. But what was it when Teddy Bridgewater had 3 top 25 wide receivers? He was still only what, QB 25 or QB 21, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So I think even if Godwin and Evans have 1,200 yard plus seasons, I still don't think that guarantees Baker a top 15 finish. And at 21, I've got Deshaun Watson. It's a gamble. We haven't seen it since he came back. He hasn't been consistent. They're doing a lot of stuff to give him weapons. They've got a pretty good offensive line. Not having Nick Chubb, I think, is going to be a challenge. And while Chubb is kind of looking like he might be back, how good will he be coming off an Achilles? It's just, while Chubb is a different kind of athlete, I still have concerns because he's coming off an Achilles. So I've got Deshaun Watson, and this I may finally after this year be all out on Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, so in my bottom 5, I wrestled with some choices too. You had some veterans in yours that I dropped out of mine because I think that they're, I think they may struggle a little bit more and may end up having a rookie kind of come in and take or a young player get to play some of those games depending on how their team is doing. So for me at 25, I don't have him much different than you. I have Will Levis. I did go back and include him. I'm just not sold on him, not sold on Tennessee having a really robust passing game. We saw one, really good game from Will Levis, but he started 9. And overall, his numbers and some of his performances were not incredible. One I've come around a little bit on, I don't know if it was me watching too much Giants Hard Knocks, is Daniel Jones. I dropped him back into number 24 for me. Deputy Dewey's best friend says he thinks Will Levis will be a top 10. I feel like there's no middle ground with Will Levis. People either think he's going to be incredible or are not sold on him. And you know what? We'll find out. Number 23 for me, I have Jaden Daniels. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I don't think Washington's offense is incredible. I think their line is still a little bit of a work in progress. And, with Cliff Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator, we never saw Kyler Murray throw for 4,000 yards. He always had a little bit more subdued seasons than you remember. I think there's going to be some growing pains for a couple of these young quarterbacks there. I have Deshaun Watson at 22, so not a whole lot different than you. I think this is a really important year for him because we've seen 12 games from him in 2 seasons. The Browns were pretty good as a team without him last year. They've gotten some weapons. I think they would like to see him step into the guy they feel like they paid for. We will see whether or not we can get it. I'm a little more cautious. And at 21, I have Bryce Young. We saw Dave Canales, you mentioned quarterback 6 season for Geno Smith in 2022, a quarterback 10 season for Baker last year. Bryce Young was quarterback 23 last year. So for all the struggles that he had, he wasn't incredibly bad for fantasy. I have him taking a modest step forward. I think Carolina is still something of a work in progress, but maybe a little more bullish than you on him. So why don't you give me your number 20 through 11? Give me your next 10.
So at 20, I've got Aaron Rodgers. Despite him and Garrett Wilson seemingly having a little bit of practice field heated discussion, I think the connection there is going to be pretty strong. And I think if Mike Williams can play 14 games, I think he can be every bit as positive for fantasy and for Aaron Rodgers that MVS or any of those big fast wide receivers that he doesn't throw a ton to, but they make big plays down the field. So I could see Mike Williams having a surprisingly good year with Rodgers if he can stay healthy. But we all know Garrett Wilson is the dog there, and they'll be on the same page when the season starts. They've got a stud at running back who can catch the ball, and Tyler Conklin, a serviceable tight end. I just don't think that overall. I feel like it's a swan song for Robert Saleh. I think the whole make a play for the veteran quarterback, draft the lousy quarterback from BYU. I think all of this is going to kind of add up. And who's the GM?
Joe Douglas, I believe.
Joe Douglas. I think he's going to can Saleh to save his own job. Is what's going to end up happening. But I think Aaron he'll have a good year for football. I think it'll be good for Bryce. I think it'll be good for Garrett Wilson. I just think that he's coming off an injury. He isn't mobile like he used to be. He still makes questionable decisions, and while he doesn't throw a ton of interceptions because he chooses to throw the ball away, his production, I think, is going to be down a little bit. At 19, I've got Matthew Stafford. We're already seeing reports that Puka is injured, but Cooper Kupp is back, and it's a great system. But I think Stafford, he's been dealing with the back injury over the last few years. I love Kyron Williams as a ride him till he's dead kind of running back. They're piecing together the tight end position right now with Higbee's injury. But it's a narrow funnel in LA, and Matthew Stafford's the one doing the pouring. I just think it's going to be an okay team, but not an exceptional team. At 18, I got Kirk Cousins, again, dealing with the same type of injury that Rodgers is. But I think a little more of a balanced team. I'm not expecting Cousins to be QB5, QB6. I think Pitts and London are going to have good years, and they've got Bijan and Algier. And Darnell Mooney will provide some deep threat shock play value. But I think in the end, I probably am expecting 28 or fewer touchdowns from Kirk Cousins this year. I think it'll be, when you've got Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, I think, they're going to have a tendency maybe to run the ball a little more in close. 17, I got Justin Herbert. Just can't quit him. I know he's been a top 8 quarterback in the past, and, we're supposed to be buying into Jim Harbaugh, smash mouth, run the ball. But Harbaugh didn't really bring in like a bunch of stud running backs. Gus Edwards is the top of the depth chart. J.K. Dobbins, much maligned because of injuries. I think he's lost a little bit of his mobility in the backfield there. So, they let Mike Williams, they let Keenan Allen go. It's on Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston, Lad McConkey. There's a lot of question marks in the receiving core, and I think that Justin Herbert gets rightfully dinged for that. 16, I got Caleb Williams. I think his rushing will help him out, but he also has a very, very good receiving core with the aforementioned Keenan Allen, the newly contract minted DJ Moore, and first round draft pick. What was he? Number 9. They have a receiving group that is set up to help him. And then they've got Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet at tight end, DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert at running back. If the offensive line can be anything close to serviceable, Williams could have a phenomenal year. While he's very, very mobile, he doesn't look to run. And so I think he kind of maybe loses some fantasy luster for that. We'll have to see. Can he make that leap seamlessly to the NFL? In their efforts to not make the same mistakes they did with Justin Fields, they're giving Caleb Williams all kinds of weapons. 15, I got Trevor Lawrence. This guy probably I could see finishing as QB 20. I like Christian Kirk. I think Brian Thomas Jr. could be the next in that long line of LSU stud wide receivers. And Evan Ingram is just racking up catches like nobody's business. Then they added Gabe Davis. I feel good about if I'm in the position and I'm drafting Travis Etienne, I like that. I just think it ends up in the end, it keeps Trevor Lawrence from being a top 12 quarterback. 14, they got Jared Goff. Great running game, but they also throw the ball a ton to the backs with Jahmyr Gibbs. Sam Laporta is set up to pick up right where he left off after last year's rookie season. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a vacuum. The real question is, who are the wide receivers 2 and 3 going to be? We're hearing a lot of great stuff about Jameson Williams. We've seen him provide big plays over the top. Can he get more consistent? And then will they get a little more out of their wide receivers 3 and 4 now that they have let Josh Reynolds move on to Denver? But I like Goff. I think, yes, the home road splits are there. We're going to see some of that. But overall, Goff gets the ball to the right players. At 13, I've got Tua Tagovailoa. Guy probably has the best 2 wide receivers, best duo of wide receivers in the NFL. But he also has 2 or 3 of the best running backs in the NFL. Explosive. We know what they're going to do. They're going to run intermediate routes, and they're going to set them up to be able to break away. And if they can do that, the Dolphins will put up a lot of points. Tua will score a lot of points. But I think with the running game now, with Mostert and Achane, they're in a position to be able to have more thunder, which is weird to say when all your running backs are 200 pounds or less. But I guess the running game has a little bit of thunder to it when everybody else is running 4.4s, 4.2s down the field. So Tua, I think Tua is going to be just fine, but I think he misses being a QB1. Brock Purdy, now this could change if they let Ayuk go, if they trade him away. I would be inclined to probably move Brock down a couple spots. But they do have Debo. They've got Christian McCaffrey, 2 phenomenal talents. They still have George Kittle. And honestly, I'm lower on Kittle, I think, than a lot of people because he does spend so much time involved in the blocking game. But if they got rid of if they trade away Ayuk, unless they get a high-level talent like an Amari Cooper back,
that's what I was going to say. Does it make a difference if it's Kendrick Bourne or George Pickens or Amari Cooper?
I would rank them probably Cooper, Pickens, and then way back Bourne. But also, they've got Ricky Pearsall, who they really like that they brought in.
Juan Jennings.
Pick on. And Jennings always seems to come up big when called upon. But I think it would, trading away Ayuk, regardless of who they get back, I think benefits George Kittle. But I've got Purdy at 12. At 11, I got Jaden Daniels. We talked earlier when we covered the Redskins. This might be a 160 target year for Terry McLaurin. Daniels has got great mobility, is an excellent athlete. However, he does put himself in harm's way a lot. He does not slide very effectively, doesn't get down. But I like Daniels' double threat ability in the run and the pass. And that's what I was saying.
Yeah, there's potential for Daniels, certainly. I was a little less bullish on some of these young quarterbacks, but, we shall see. For me, at number 20, I have Baker Mayfield. I think he'll come down off of where he was last year, but they kept that offense largely intact. Still has White there as a good receiving back, has Godwin and Evans. I still like them together. I have Aaron Rodgers at 19. You mentioned a lot of the things that go against him. I also think, one other thing about the Jets is that they have an incredible running back in Breece Hall. He was running back 2 last year, carried that offense a lot. I think they can lean on him in the running game. Maybe don't have to throw it quite as much. They also have a pretty good defense. I have Justin Herbert there at 18, kind of the same as you. I still like Justin Herbert. A couple things that concern me. the Chargers offense in general feels like a work in progress. Their philosophy feels like it's going to be a little bit of a change. And you would have said in the past, Herbert's not an incredible runner, but he has run enough that it has boosted some of his numbers. He's got that plantar fascia injury, and they said he won't miss time in the regular season, and I fully believe that. That kind of an injury, though, is more of you don't recover from it. It's more of a pain tolerance in season. I mentioned on Friday Peyton Manning had that in his last year with Denver, and it noticeably impacted. He was not fleet of foot by any stretch, in any way. But I think that's something that bears watching with Herbert. I have Stafford at 17, not much different from you. I still like Matthew Stafford. I think he's a great veteran. I think the Rams are going to be very competitive. There are other quarterbacks I like better. I also have Williams at 16. They have a pretty great offense they're building around him. I think there's still going to be some ups and downs. I also wonder a little bit, his offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, had a whole lot of weapons, had 3 pretty good receivers last year in Seattle and a pretty good tight end, and also leaned on the running game and produced a quarterback that was in the teens and 20s. I'm not sure that it's going to be quite as high octane as some people think. The one that I'm probably most, I'm stepping up a little bit. I have Kirk Cousins at 15. I think if there's a lot of questions about him and health. We get copious reports about Aaron Rodgers and his progress dating back all the way to last regular season. Not a lot of talk about Cousins and his progress. He is 5 years younger. He has typically probably been a little less mobile than Rodgers was. But, he's new team, new offensive coordinator, new weapons. At 14, I have Trevor Lawrence. I think we've discovered what he is at this point in time is pretty much a solid QB2. I have Kyler Murray at 13. Be excited to see if they can continue that progress that they started to make at the end of last year. Kyler Murray still in his career has never thrown for 4,000 yards. Will this be the year that changes? Perhaps. We'll see. I have Anthony Richardson at 12. I am excited to see him come back. He looked really good in 3.5 games that we saw him play last year. I think he will end up going through some of the growing pains he would have gone through as a rookie, playing more games this season. He also, another one, by his playing style, I'm not 100% certain I see him for 17 games, but I like the upside. I like that offense a little better. I think they have a better running game around him with Jonathan Taylor. I like Michael Pittman better than, like the situation in Washington, where I'm not as sold on the line, the running backs, and the receivers. And then I have Brock Purdy at 11. I'm a little bit like you. If they lost Ayuk, I might look at the situation. If they brought Kendrick Bourne back, I think that creates a little more questions about what they're going to do in a wide receiver too. But if they brought back Amari Cooper, I don't really see that changing. A lot of the appeal of Brock Purdy is George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. So I still feel pretty solid with him in QB1. Who is in your top 10?
All right, so in number 10, I have Jordan Love. We talked a lot about Jordan Love last year, how, he had a great situation. It was a young quarterback with lots of young receivers, and we just wanted to see how they matured. Well, we saw how they matured, and in year 1, they looked great. I think we need to see how the receivers shake out. Christian Watson, is he going to be over his hamstring issue? Everybody seems to think Romeo Doubs is really a wide receiver 4, but he keeps getting pushed up. Jaden Reed, people love because he can play like Deebo, carry the ball, do lots of things like that. Every time he's called upon, Dontavian Wicks produces. And then out of nowhere, their wide receiver 5, Bo Melton, when he is called upon to play, it looks like he should be starting somewhere. So they've got a great group of wide receivers. we have to see, is anybody going to step up and become a Devontae Adams or, a Jordy Nelson? Can somebody step up and be that level of a guy out of this group? The tight ends, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, both look good. They brought in Josh Jacobs and gave him a fantastic contract, which is essentially they can get out after 1 year. So we'll see how Marshawn Lloyd does. But I think the team is squarely on Jordan Love's shoulders. He's got to make the right decisions, do the right things. And I think we're going to see a little bit of, that Kansas City thing with the wide receivers after Tyreek. It's who's open. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're, quote unquote, a number one elite guy. You either are open or you're not, or you're going somewhere I can throw you open. And so we may not ever get an elite wide receiver out of this group of receivers. It may be that play you want is always going to be Jordan Love. So I've got Love at 10. At 9, I've got Kyler Murray. I've been a noted anti-Kyler Murray fantasy analyst. And maybe it's my scarlet and gray colored glasses with Marvin Harrison. Maybe it's Trey McBride doing what he did last year. The drafting of Trey Benson to pair with James Conner to essentially be the heir to James Conner. Michael Wilson looked good. He just, again, much like college, he struggled with injuries a little bit last year. But when Wilson played, he looked really good. They brought in Zay Jones, who's kind of a stable veteran. I think Kyler breaks 4,000 yards for the first time this year. We know he's mobile. He's going to get you some on the ground, some rushing touchdowns. I think Kyler has a career year. Will it end up being the best of his career? I don't know. It's going to be the best of his career to date. So I've got Kyler at 9. And I'm talking passing, not necessarily fantasy numbers, because I know he's had a better fantasy year. At 8, I've got Dak Prescott. When you look at that running back group, it just feels like a team that's going to pass. And if the team is passing, that means the quarterback's putting up stats. They've got CeeDee Lamb, who's arguably the best wide receiver in all of football. Brandon Cooks, who's probably one of the historically most underappreciated wide receivers in all of football. Jalen Tolbert, who we loved last year as a rookie and flamed out. Seems like he's coming on now. They've got Jake Ferguson at tight end. And their running back room is weak. This team is they're going to need to have the offensive line gel because they've had some downgrades there because of the contract and salary cap situation. But I like Dak to be throwing the ball a lot and throwing touchdown passes to CeeDee Lamb. At 7, I got Joe Burrow. Burrow isn't mobile. He's got some pocket mobility. Since he tore up the knee, he doesn't really run a whole lot. But, man, he'll throw the ball everywhere. He's fearless when it comes to throwing. He's got 2 big wide receivers in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Andre Iosivas came in last year, an Ivy Leaguer who stepped up and did a nice job, made him feel comfortable letting Tyler Boyd walk. And then they brought in Jermaine Burton, who, never quite, I think, hit his full potential that he had going into college while he was in college. But he's a good receiver. He's got an Alabama pedigree. We'll see what happens there. But Joe Burrow is still Joe Burrow. At number 6, we got C.J. Stroud. Houston brought in Stephon Diggs to add to Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz, which makes for an awesome passing group. Then they added Joe Mixon, who suits their running game to a T. And, by the way, is also a good pass catcher. And in case you forgot, quarterbacks get points for throwing the ball to running backs too. So it feels like C.J. Stroud is set up to be more successful than he was last year. At number 5, I've got Anthony Richardson. I guess I agree with your sentiment about his injury potential, but you can't predict injuries. And the dude is 6'5" and 245 pounds, or 6'4" and 245 pounds. He's got Jonathan Taylor to take the heat off him running the ball. Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell, Josh Downs, a good receiving core with a stud wide receiver. I like Richardson to mix in enough running to boost his fantasy stock and still keep Michael Pittman Jr. A top 15, top 12 wide receiver. Got Lamar Jackson at number 4. You can't help but wonder, is Derrick Henry going to just take a little bite out of Jackson's ground potential? A lot of where we've made our hay with Lamar Jackson has been on the ground because he is such a dynamic runner. I don't think he gives it away and just completely stops running the ball. But I think Lamar is, as long as Henry is healthy, I think we're going to see Lamar run the ball a bit less. And he's still got Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews to throw the ball to. They must have still seen something with Rashad Bateman because they signed him to an extension. So they like their wide receiver group. They brought back who's the old guy, fast guy, number 15, I think he is. What's his name?
Aguilar,
yeah, Nelson Aguilar. So they still got him as their wide receiver 3. So I like Lamar. I think he's still going to be super productive. We've seen him have an MVP season, throw 36 touchdowns on low passing volume. Derrick Henry, being an efficient runner of the ball, might set him up to have another very, very efficient passing season. So that's why Lamar still makes it to number 4. I've got Hurts at number 3. Man, it feels like you want to put Hurts higher, but they've got a great receiving core. Goddard's a solid tight end. Then they add Saquon Barkley, and they lose Jason Kelsey. Do I think the tush push is going to just go away? No. But if it stops being as effective as it was, they could go away from it a little bit more. Barkley's also a great receiving back. So there's lots of things playing in. I think we see Hurts passing a little more, running a little bit less, and that drops him down to number 3. At 2, I got Patrick Mahomes. I want to put Mahomes at number 1, but with Josh Allen's rushing, it's just hard to put Mahomes at number 1. Do I see a scenario where Mahomes sets records for passing yards and passing touchdowns in a season? Yeah, I see it. It could happen, and that may make me look silly having him at number 2. He's arguably the best quarterback in the league right now.
But he's also been a lower end QB1 the last 2 years. So
right, and since they let Tyreek walk or traded Tyreek away, whatever they did. But I like Rashee Rice. They brought in Hollywood Brown, who adds an element to the game. And they brought in Xavier Worthy, who's Hollywood Brown with worse hands. And Isaiah Pacheco has stepped up, and if he stays healthy, I think he provides more of a 3-down capacity. I think he catches the ball a little bit more. Like I said, I think it wouldn't surprise me if Mahomes pushed 50 touchdown passes, even with that receiving core without an elite option. But at number 1, I've got the man Josh Allen. I know they brought in Ray Davis. But let's face it, Josh Allen is 6 foot, 245 pounds. Ray Davis is 5'8" and 207 pounds. Davis may have a lot of power for a 5'8", 207 pounder. Josh Allen has a lot more power at 6'5" and 245 pounds. Allen is still going to be their goal line back. They're going to have some work to do in the receiving core, but I feel like Keon Coleman is set up for a Kelvin Benjamin-esque rookie year. Khalil Shakir is coming on. The other receivers are kind of fading. It's going to come down to their running 12 personnel, I think, with Dawson Knox and last year's rookie darling, Dalton Kincaid. Wouldn't surprise me if Kincaid, a la Travis Kelce, leads the team in catches and even yards.
Yeah, so for me, I also have Jordan Love at 10. He was QB5 last year. I think he's still going to be, a top QB1. I have Goff at QB9, Jared Goff. I like Detroit. I like their passing game. He was very solid in the QB1 range last year. I have Tua at QB8, so I'm a little higher on Goff and Tua than you are. Maybe like their passing games for their teams a little bit more. Like you, I have Burrow at 7. Looking forward to seeing him back. I think Higgins is going to be motivated, wanting to have a good year, kind of in that contract year. And I really like Jamar Chase and some of their other weapons. I put Jackson at 6. I dropped him a couple of spots because I think he could lose some red zone rushing opportunities to Derrick Henry, because where you were talking about the Bills not really adding a physically more intimidating running back than their quarterback, the Ravens sure did. Gus had 13 rushing touchdowns for the Ravens last year. I have a feeling we could see that and more from Derrick Henry. I also think they want to protect Lamar a little bit more. I think Henry is a battering ram, which wears defenses down. Their approach to their passing game weapons has been curious to me for a while. They didn't add a ton last year, so it's kind of a shoulder shrug to say that they got demonstrably worse letting Odell Beckham Jr. go. I think their passing game is kind of what it is. I have CJ Stroud at 5. I love the weapons that they gave him there with the Texans. I have Jalen Hurts at 4. I think Saquon might get some more red zone opportunities than perhaps some of their other backs that they've had the last few years had, but the Eagles still have an incredible set of passing game weapons. I think Hurts is still going to be great. I have Dak Prescott at 3, and a couple reasons. I don't think the Cowboys are going to get a deal done, and I think he and CeeDee Lamb are going to want to run wild because I think they're going to be auditioning for other teams. I don't know what Dallas is doing. And I combine that with a coach who has historically been more pass-friendly. Even when he was coach in Green Bay, they like to put the ball up more than they like to run. And the fact that they don't really have much of a running game. I mean, when you're signing Ezekiel Elliott at this stage and just hoping to find some magic, that tells me you're going to be a more pass-oriented offense. I'm not sure their defense is quite as strong as it's been in years past, too, so they may face some more challenges. And then I have the same 2 and 1 as you. I have Mahomes at 2, and I have Josh Allen at 1. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Who is somebody that you did not have in your top 25 quarterbacks that you think could make the leap into the top 25?
So it's tough to, if somebody outside the top 25, they're going to have to put it all together. And, we've seen over the last, going back to Dak Prescott, coming in as a 4th-round pick, taking over for an injured Tony Romo and stepping up and playing well. And Brock Purdy stepping in after starting more games than anybody in college football history. Bo Nix is my guy that I think could jump into the, would you say, top 20, top 12 or top 25? Bo Nix played 61 games in college. Had almost 1,300 pass attempts, threw 113 touchdowns and 26 interceptions. His completion percentage got better every single year, as did his yards per attempt. Now, playing at Auburn, he left Auburn. He admittedly, I think the offense there wasn't suited to being like high passing volume. He went from 197 passes in 2021 in 10 games to 364 in 2023 in 14 games. I don't think Denver is gonna ride with Jarrett Stidham very long. Nix has a lot of experience. I think he's gonna come in and he's smart. He's gonna make good decisions. Wouldn't surprise me if he moved into the top 24 wide quarterbacks this year from being, what do I have him, 29.
Mine, it's interesting. The Pittsburgh Steelers have two quarterbacks they brought in that were both quarterback twos last year, and their quarterback competition has been the most insufferably covered and the hardest to read. But I'm going to go with Justin Fields because it feels like he has impressed, and I'm not totally bought in on Russell Wilson there. And I think Fields, we've seen him even in teams with crappy records and crappy offenses be able to have enough rushing skills to put him up into the QB2 range. So that's the one I'm going with. The next one, who is somebody that's like your biggest question mark or maybe makes you the most nervous that's in your top 25 that you could see easily falling out?
Well, I've got like 3 of them in different tiers. So like I mentioned Will Levis as somebody that I think could just completely fall flat on his face. Got him at 24. I could see him getting benched for Mason Rudolph. In the next tier, we did 20 through 11.
Yeah.
Lawrence is one who seems perpetually poised to take this giant step and just doesn't. I could see him dropping to the bottom end of QB2s. And then you're not going to win, I think, consistently betting on injury. But Anthony Richardson at QB5, because he doesn't slide well, he doesn't avoid contact well, and because of how big and athletic he is, he will run. He could potentially, get dinged up, be a tough guy, play through it, lose effectiveness. We've seen Kyler Murray lose effectiveness when he tries to play through stuff. Richardson at QB5, I could see him dropping out of the top 12 because he gets himself injured. That makes me a little bit nervous because I have significant investments across my dynasty teams in Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and I know I mentioned injury risk. I wasn't thinking about him missing a huge chunk of time, just getting banged up, maybe missing a half or a game or two. But I actually think it's his rawness as a passer is really the reason that I have him further down at 12. We didn't see, I think he has enough upside as a rusher to keep him in the top 12, but I think he's going to have to go through some of those rookie growing pains that he missed out on by not really playing last year. But the one that probably makes me the most nervous, I mentioned, is Kirk Cousins. Just we have not heard a ton about him, and part of me wonders if Atlanta wasn't nervous a little bit hedging their bets when they brought in Michael Penix. I know he's their quarterback of the future too, but new scheme, new team, new teammates coming off a massive injury. It could be harder to make that adjustment than expected, which would sort of bum me out for my hopes for some of his fantasy weapons too that we'll talk about later.
And you keep hearing a lot of good stuff about Penix too.
Who's one guy you have in the lower part of the top 25 that you think could break into the top 12 if things break right for him?
It would probably be Baker Mayfield. He's got 2 bona fide studs. Liam Cohen, produced at Kentucky. He went through the McVay system, so he's kind of familiar with what they do there. I could see him, making Chris Godwin hyper productive in that Cooper Kupp kind of role. And then Mike Evans, just doing what Mike Evans does, making big plays downfield. Baker's a YOLO player. He'll chuck it down there. He knows he's got 6'5", 235-pound Mike Evans, and he'll chuck it down there. Cade Otton has been coming on. He's played consistent. Jalen McMillan's been getting good press, making plays as a rookie, pushing for the wide receiver 3 spot. And then Rachaad White just keeps getting volume. He's not effective, or let me take that back. He's not efficient as a runner, but he's a very good pass catching back, and we've seen him pile up numbers. And so I could see Baker pushing for top 12 if everything goes right in that defense. If the defense sucks, it may make it even easier for him.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels. Probably for some of the same arguments of why I vaulted Anthony Richardson up in the top 12. The easiest path for some of these quarterbacks who still have some growing to do as passers is to be a strong rusher. I'm not as sold on Washington's offense in general, and I didn't love Cliff Kingsbury as a play caller when he was in Arizona. So I'm a little more. I'm a little lower on Washington in general, but Daniels has the potential. You could see if things broke right. I mean, we've seen guys even on bad teams be able to vault up, so he would be my pick. That'll do it for us today. Looking at quarterbacks, we will be back on Friday. We are going to bust into mock draft territory. We're going to do a redraft mock draft. Be on the lookout for us putting out a link. If you want to hop in there, we will do it Friday afternoon. It will be short clocks as we go through. It will be a 1 QB rookie mock. But Dennis, if people are jonesing for football, but we still have a few days before preseason, what can they do to fill that time?
They need to check out our catalog of team previews. Go to your favorite podcast platform. Hit that like and subscribe button. Search out the Fantasy Football Roundtable. Like, subscribe, go back, listen. We broke down every single team and what we think they're going to do for fantasy this year. Give us a rating and a review. Makes us feel good.
Well, we will see you guys on Friday for mock draft. Until then, have a wonderful week.